There is nothing wrong with receiving a salary. Let's make that clear from the start, because many people confuse things. The salary itself is not the villain. It is important. It brings security. It pays bills, puts food on the table, and helps keep the house in order. The problem starts when a person turns the salary into the only column that sustains their entire life. That is where the danger lies. Because when everything depends on a single source of money, any delay, any cut, any emergency, any change at work is already enough to shake the entire structure. It is like building an entire house on a single pillar. While that pillar is standing firm, everything seems fine. But one crack is enough for fear to appear. And that is how many people live without realizing it. They work the whole month, receive their pay everything, breathe for a few days, and then start the race again. Money comes in and goes out so fast that it never has time to mature. There is never space for it to grow. It simply passes through the person's hands, but does not stay to work in their favor. And here is the turning point that few people learn early. A salary was not made only to be spent. A salary should be treated as a seed. And a seed has a much greater purpose than disappearing. When you plant a seed in the right soil and care for it with patience, it stops being just a seed. It grows, takes root, produces fruit, and over time generates new seeds. With money, it works the same way. If every salary is used only to put out fires in the present, the future will always remain empty. But when a part of it is set aside intelligently, it begins to build something greater. That is why the financially wise person does not look at their salary and think only, "What can I buy this month?" They look and ask, "How much of this can I save? What can I invest? What can I turn into something that keeps paying me afterward?" That question changes everything, because the moment money stops being only consumption and becomes a tool, it begins to change its function in the person's life. It stops being mere survival and starts becoming construction. Many people go through entire decades without understanding this. They receive raises, change jobs, work more hours, feel proud of earning a little better, but remain in the same financial place because they never learned to turn their salary into a source of new income. And whoever does not create new sources always ends up trapped waiting for the next paycheck, trapped waiting for the next deposit, trapped waiting for the next business day. That is exhausting, draining, and gives the feeling that life is always running behind without really moving forward. The truth is simple but powerful. Wealth is not born from salary alone. Wealth begins when the salary is organized, protected, and directed. First comes the discipline of not spending everything, then comes the courage to save even when it seems like little. Next comes the intelligence to invest that amount in something that can grow over time. And then emerges what changes the story of any person: multiple sources of income. One income that comes from work, another that comes from what was saved, another that comes from what was invested, another that comes from something built with vision. When the person understands this, they stop seeing the salary as an end point and begin to see it as a starting point. This is liberating, because instead of depending on a single tap, they begin to open others. And the earlier they learn this lesson, the sooner money stops being something that simply comes in and goes out, and becomes something that grows, multiplies, and starts working for them. Many people grew up believing that having a fixed salary was already a sign of security, and looking from a distance, that really seems true. After all, every month the money comes in, the bills are paid, the routine continues, and the person feels in control. But it is precisely here that one of Robert Kiyosaki's strongest teachings comes in. The problem is not earning a salary. The problem is living dependent on it as if it were the only solution to financial life. In Kiyosaki's view, whoever depends only on salary is always trading time for money. They work hours, days, entire weeks, receive at the end of the month, and then start all over again. It is like running on a treadmill. You make an effort, sweat, get tired, but remain practically in the same place. Because the money arrives, but it leaves quickly. It comes in through one door and goes out through another. And in the end, the person realizes they worked a lot, but almost nothing remained. That is why he teaches that the salary should be treated as the beginning of construction, not as the final destination. Instead of looking at the paycheck and thinking only about what to consume, the person should look at that money as a seed. One part serves for living, of course, but another part needs to be protected and put to work. Because according to this mindset, whoever wants to grow financially cannot depend only on their own strength. They need to make money produce more money. Imagine two people receiving exactly the same amount at the end of the month. The first spends everything trying to maintain their life, please others, and feel like they are winning. The second sets a part aside, however small, to acquire assets, learn to invest, and create new income streams. At the beginning, the two seem equal. But over time, the difference between them becomes enormous. One keeps living to pay bills, the other begins, little by little, to build freedom. That is the central point. Salary alone does not build wealth. Wealth is born when the money you receive stops being only consumption and becomes an asset, becomes an investment, becomes something that continues generating returns, even when you are not working at that exact moment. And this change of thinking transforms everything, because the person stops living only for the current month and begins to lay the foundation of their own future. Robert Kiyosaki always hammers this point very clearly. The rich do not work only for money, they make money work for them. And it all begins here, in this seemingly simple but powerful decision of not spending everything that comes in. Because when the salary becomes a seed, it stops being merely a payment. It becomes the first step toward building multiple sources of income. And it is exactly there that the true financial change begins. Many people spend their lives believing in a silent lie that the next salary raise will fix everything. The person looks at their own situation and thinks, the problem is that I earn too little. When I earn more, my life will fall into place. But it almost never happens that way, because the money increases, but the mindset remains the same. And when the mindset remains the same mistakes keep running the financial life. This is one of the greatest misconceptions of those who live trapped in a salary mentality. The person always thinks the solution lies in the amount that has not yet arrived. They place their hope in the next adjustment, the next promotion, the next bonus, the next job. Yet while waiting for that extra money, they do not realize that the real problem lies in the way they see money. Because whoever does not know how to manage a little, generally does not know how to manage a lot either. Only the size of the numbers changes, but the struggle continues, and this happens in an almost invisible way. When income rises, the person feels relief, of course. They think that now there will be something left over. They think that now they will be able to breathe. But shortly afterward, that new money has already been swallowed by new expenses, new habits, and new justifications. Suddenly, what seemed to be the solution becomes just another chapter of the same story. More money comes in, more money goes out, and in the end, nothing really changes. The problem is not only in the salary. The problem is in living with the belief that earning more is the only answer. Because when someone thinks this way, they never stop to develop financial intelligence. They never learn to set a part aside, never learn to build assets, never learn to make money work for them. They simply keep trading time for money, month after month, year after year, as if chasing something that always moves away. The truth is that real financial progress begins when the mindset changes. It begins when the person stops asking only, how do I earn more? and also starts asking, how do I better use what I already earn? How do I make this money grow? How do I stop depending only on my physical effort and start building something greater? That is where financial life begins to leave autopilot. Because in the end, a raise without a change in mindset does not bring freedom. It brings only temporary comfort, and temporary comfort does not build wealth. What builds wealth is discipline, vision, control, and the decision to use money as a tool, not merely as a reward for the month worked. And there is a trap that catches almost everyone without making any noise. The person starts earning more, but instead of becoming financially stronger, they simply become more expensive. This is one of the most common mistakes in the life of those who never learn to control their own money. Because the salary rises, and along with it rise the expenses, the desires, and the need to display a new standard. At first it seems like something small. The person thinks, now I deserve to eat better. Now I can get a new phone. Now I can finance a better car. Now I can live somewhere more expensive, and one decision pulls another. The simple coffee becomes an expensive coffee every day. The clothes bought only when needed become impulse purchases. The car that got them everywhere stops being enough, not because it broke down, but because it no longer fits the new image the person wants to show. And that is where the danger lies. Because on the outside it looks like progress, but on the inside, often nothing has changed. The person still has no savings, no investment, no assets, still trapped waiting for the next paycheck. The only difference is that now they have larger expenses to sustain. Before, the money was not enough to maintain a simple life. Now it is not enough to maintain a more expensive life. The prison remains the same, just with prettier walls. This happens because many people confuse income increase with permission to raise their consumption standard. Instead of using the extra money to strengthen the foundation, they use it to inflate their appearance. Instead of creating security, they create new commitments. Instead of buying time for the future, they buy pressure for the present. And then something happens that seems absurd, but is very common. The person earns double and still says the money is not enough. Think about this. When someone has no control, any new amount that comes in already finds a ready destination to go out. The raise that could become an investment becomes an installment. The bonus that could become savings becomes a trip paid in installments. The extra money that could buy freedom ends up buying more dependence. And what is most concerning is that this happens gradually, as if it were normal. Therefore, every time income increases, the right question is not, what can I buy now? The right question is, how can I use this raise to truly grow? Because if the person does not decide this clearly, the market decides for them. Advertising decides for them. Vanity decides for them. Comparison with others decides for them. And in the end, the money that could have built wealth disappears, sustaining habits that leave nothing behind. Growing financially is not raising your salary and raising the cost of your own life at the same speed. Growing financially is making income rise while decisions become smarter. It is resisting the temptation to turn every advance into immediate consumption. It is understanding that not every new dollar needs to become comfort right now. Sometimes it needs to become a foundation, needs to become an asset, needs to become something that makes sense 5, 10, 20 years from now. Because whoever earns more and spends everything stays in the same game. But whoever earns more and invests the difference truly begins to change their life. Now think about how a company works. At the base are many people. People who work hard, keep schedules, hold the routine together, keep the machine running. Above that base, the numbers begin to shrink. Fewer positions, fewer openings, less space, and at the very top are a few, very few. Precisely those who receive the highest salaries, the largest bonuses, the highest benefits, the decision-making power. This structure seems normal, and in fact it is that way almost everywhere. But there is a hidden truth in it that many people take a long time to accept. If you count only on salary increases within this system, your journey toward financial freedom may be far too slow. Because when the person looks upward, they imagine that one day they will get there. They imagine that with effort, patience, and time, they will climb step by step until reaching a truly high salary. But the problem is that each step usually takes a long time, sometimes years. And while those years pass, life does not stand still waiting. The bills do not wait. Age does not wait. Children grow, costs increase, responsibilities appear. And the person realizes they are placing all hope for change in a path that may be narrower and longer than they imagined. This is one of the great illusions of traditional professional life. The person believes that if they hold on long enough, the salary will one day fix everything, but they forget one important detail. Few people reach the top, and even among those who do, not all achieve true freedom. Because earning a lot is not the same as building wealth. Many people climb the ladder, earn more, but the cost of living also climbs, along with pressure, consumption standards, and the level of dependence on that salary. So see the risk in this. The person spends entire years betting everything on a promotion. They work more, accept pressure, give up time, live exhausted waiting for the next recognition. And when they finally advance a little, they discover they are still far from the tranquility they imagined. Because the salary system, by nature, concentrates more people at the bottom than at the top. This is the logic of the pyramid. Many people compete for little space. Many people dream of the top, but almost all remain in the middle or at the base for a very long time. This does not mean that growing in a career is bad. It is not. Growing is good. Earning better is important. Seeking excellence at work makes sense. The mistake is in depending only on that. The mistake is in thinking that the promotion will be the only path to freedom. Because if the person places all their hope only in that ladder, they may discover too late that it climbs too slowly for the dreams they have. That is why the intelligent financial mindset does not simply wait for the company to decide its future. It uses the current salary as a base, but begins to build other exits at the same time. While working, it learns to invest. While receiving, it sets apart a side for assets. While growing professionally, it also plants sources of income outside the paycheck. Because this way, the person is not stuck on a single ladder. They create other doors, other possibilities, other paths. In the end, whoever depends only on the salary pyramid lives always looking upward, waiting for someone to open space. But whoever understands the money game begins to build something of their own, even before reaching the top. And that decision changes everything. Because financial freedom is not born only when someone gives you a higher position. It begins when you stop handing your entire future to a promotion that may take longer than your life can wait. And there is another point that almost no one notices when they begin to bet everything on salary. Rising income within a career almost always takes time, a lot of time. It does not happen overnight. Normally, the person starts earning little, then spends some years trying to prove their worth, waiting for recognition, seeking promotion, accepting more responsibilities, carrying more pressure, and believing that somewhere down the road, all that effort will finally transform into financial peace. But while that down the road does not arrive, life keeps happening. And life does not slow down just because the salary has not risen yet. On the contrary, it tends to accelerate. New bills appear, new commitments, new duties. Someone who used to care only for themselves begins to care for the home, the family, the children, the parents, the unexpected, health, the car, school, rent, the maintenance of everything. And suddenly, time passes, the weight grows, and that hope placed in the next paycheck keeps seeming distant. This is one of the greatest dangers of expecting too much from a salary. The person begins by believing they only need patience. Then they think they need just a little more time. Then they tell themselves they are almost where they want to be. But the years keep passing, and often they remain stuck in the same cycle. Work more, earn a little better, but also carry more expenses and more obligations. It is like climbing a staircase while carrying weight on your back. Even when you advance, the body feels it. The exhaustion appears, and freedom keeps seeming far away. And the more time passes, the more delicate this situation becomes, because it is not only the salary that grows slowly. Along with time come emotional and financial responsibilities. The person is no longer just trying to succeed for themselves. Now, they feel they must ensure security for other people as well. They must deliver. They must measure up. They must keep the house running. And this causes them to accept living dependent on that monthly payment, even knowing it is not building the future they dreamed of. The problem is that when someone waits only for paycheck growth, they place their own freedom in the hands of a slow process. They depend on performance reviews, on vacancies, on management decisions, on the company's timing, on the economy, on factors they do not fully control. And financial freedom does not go well with total dependence on something so fragile. Because when a person's income comes from a single source, any delay or change already generates fear. And constant fear is a sign that the foundation is still weak. That is why those who think more intelligently do not dismiss the salary, but also do not hand all hope to it. They use the salary as support, as a tool, as initial fuel, but they understand that waiting only for the next deposit is a path that can keep a person trapped for far too long. Trapped to the clock, trapped to the boss, trapped to the end of the month, trapped to the feeling of always making effort but never really arriving where they truly wanted to be. The great turning point begins when the person realizes that the paycheck can pay for the present, but should not be the only one responsible for building the future. Because if they let that happen, they may spend many years merely surviving. Well-dressed, well-groomed, apparently stable, but internally exhausted and financially vulnerable. And no one deserves to spend their entire life working hard, only to always depend on the same source. Freedom begins when the money coming in from work stops being the only pillar of life, when part of it begins to be transformed into savings, into assets, into investments, into something that grows beyond daily effort. That is where the game truly begins to change. Because the person stops waiting only for the salary to increase and begins to build, through their own decisions, the exit that salary alone may never be able to deliver. And here enters an even more dangerous trap, because it affects not only the wallet, but also the ego, the life of appearances. Today, many people do not spend merely to live. They spend to appear to be living better than they really are. They buy to show. They pay in installments to impress. They stretch themselves to maintain an image that in most cases only exists on the outside. And this has grown even stronger with social media, where many people have learned to build a beautiful showcase even when the stock of real life is empty. The problem with appearances is that they cost a lot. Much too much. Because when the person begins to live to sustain an image, they stop making decisions based on what makes sense and start deciding based on what others will think. They do not buy because they need something. They buy because they want to appear successful. They do not choose because it fits the budget. They choose because it matches the image they want to project. And gradually, without noticing, they begin to trade peace for applause, tranquility for approval, future for vanity. This is how many silent financial mistakes are born. The person finances something they did not need. They take on an expense they cannot handle. They spend money they have not even earned yet, all to maintain a facade of success. On the outside, everything seems fine. Nice clothes, beautiful car, expensive places, well-taken photos, smile at the right moment. But on the inside, the numbers do not add up. Anxiety grows, pressure increases. The fear of not being able to maintain that standard begins to live inside the daily routine. And what is most curious is that often the person is not even trying to impress someone important. They are wearing themselves out to catch the attention of people who do not even participate in their real life. People who will not pay their bills, will not invest for them, will not help them in an emergency, and will not build their future. Yet they sacrifice months, years, and opportunities just to appear to be at a level they have not actually built yet. That is why whoever truly wants to grow must learn a hard but liberating lesson. Financial humility is strength, not weakness. Living below what you could display is wisdom. Choosing the foundation before the showcase is intelligence, because wealth does not make noise in the beginning. Investment does not attract as much attention as consumption. Financial savings do not earn likes. Planning does not make a beautiful photo. But it is precisely these silent things that sustain a strong life as time passes. Whoever thinks long-term understands they do not need to prove anything to anyone. They do not need to rush to show they succeeded before the right time. They prefer to organize the house, strengthen the structure, create margin, build security. They prefer to have peace when they lie down over likes when they post. They prefer to look at their own account and know they are moving forward, even if no one is applauding. In the end, appearances may fool people for a moment, but they do not sustain a life. What sustains a life is a foundation. It is planning. It is discipline. It is having the courage to be simple now in order to be strong later. Because true wealth is not looking rich for a few minutes on a screen. True wealth is building a life that remains solid even when no one is watching. Now, there is a very important difference that few people understand in time. Knowing how to present yourself well can help, but it does not replace substance. It may open a door, attract attention, create a strong first impression. But once the door opens, what sustains the person inside is not the packaging. It is what they truly know how to do. It is their posture. It is their discipline. It is their character. It is the ability to deliver real value. Many people get lost precisely at this point. They learn to appear confident, learn to speak well, learn to dress in a way that conveys success, even learn to build a convincing social image. And for a moment, it works. People look, notice, compliment, take interest. But life, sooner or later, always demands consistency. And when that hour comes, having a good appearance is not enough if there is no competence behind it. It is not enough to appear prosperous if finances are disorganized. It is not enough to project power if, in practice, the person cannot sustain their own choices. This applies to everything. It applies to business, to career, to relationships, to the way a person positions themselves in the world. Someone may impress at the beginning with the right clothes, the right car, the right words, the right pose. But over time, reality always surfaces, because it is not the external shine that keeps an opportunity alive. What keeps it alive is delivery. It is responsibility. It is respect for one's own word. It is the firmness of someone who does not depend only on image to be taken seriously. And here is a profound point. Many people invest more in appearing prepared than in actually preparing themselves. They spend more energy trying to build an admirable version of themselves for others than building a solid foundation within their own life. They want to be seen as successful before becoming successful. They want to reap respect without first planting value. They want the recognition of prosperity without going through the silent process that creates true prosperity. But life does not sustain itself on improvisation. At some point, the bill arrives. Not necessarily a financial bill, but the bill of incoherence, the bill of living above one's own reality, the bill of maintaining a character, the bill of trying to convince the world of something that has not yet been built from within. And this weighs. It weighs on the mind, weighs on the routine, weighs on decisions, weighs on the wallet. Because maintaining a false appearance demands constant effort, while living with truth brings lightness. Of course, image has its place. Taking care of yourself, speaking well, presenting yourself with dignity, being respectful, and projecting confidence is important. This is part of life. It helps, yes. No one is saying the person should walk through the world carelessly or ignore the importance of good posture. The point is something else. Image needs to be a reflection of a real foundation, not a curtain to hide emptiness. When appearance comes accompanied by competence, it strengthens. When it comes accompanied by character, it inspires trust. When it comes accompanied by wisdom, it opens lasting paths. But when there is only appearance, everything becomes fragile. One deeper conversation, one greater difficulty, one more serious demand, and the truth begins to surface. Because life always tests. It tests what the person knows. It tests what the person can endure. It tests what the person does when no one is watching. It tests how they deal with pressure, with scarcity, with responsibility. And in those moments, it is not image that holds. It is the inner structure. That is why whoever truly wants to prosper must stop investing only in appearing and start investing in being. Being more disciplined, being more conscious, being more prepared, being more responsible with money, being stronger in decisions, being more truthful in what they show and in how they live, because appearance may accelerate the beginning of a story, but only reality sustains the middle and the end. In the end, a good image may attract attention for a few minutes, but it is competence and character that keep doors open for many years, and this applies as much to financial life as to life as a whole. Because there is no point in appearing to be a person of value if on the inside the foundation is still weak. What transforms life is not appearing ready. It is becoming ready little by little with truth, with consistency, and with choices that make sense when the audience is gone and only you remain facing your own reality. In the end, the great lesson is simple but profound. True prosperity cannot be measured only by what the eyes of others can see. Many people spend years chasing external signs of wealth, trying to prove they succeeded, trying to show they made it, trying to sustain a beautiful image for the world. But when the door closes and the person is left alone with their own reality, that is the moment truth appears, because it is not the clothes, not the car, not the address, not the photo, not the status that define whether someone is truly prosperous. What defines it is the foundation. What defines it is the value that person built, the knowledge they accumulated, the discipline they developed, and the capacity they learned to make money grow without destroying their own peace. Prosperity is not only having money in hand. Prosperity is having direction. It is knowing how to produce. It is knowing how to generate value. It is knowing how to transform effort into results and results into wealth. It is having the wisdom not to fall into the trap of appearing great on the outside while being weak on the inside. Because a life based only on appearances may impress for a time, but it does not hold up when the real pressures of life arrive. One crisis, one unexpected event, one loss of income, one sudden change, and what seemed so solid begins to crumble. And this happens because many people built the showcase before building the structure. That is why so many people end up sacrificing the future to maintain an image in the present. They buy houses larger than their budget can handle, take on heavy financing just to show growth, commit to long installments to drive a car that impresses more than it helps, choose more expensive expenditures, not out of necessity, but for status. And gradually, Without realizing it, they begin to trade freedom for obligation. They trade tranquility for installments. They trade dignity for social approval. The money that could be invested, multiplied, and transformed into assets ends up being drained by commitments that feed only the appearance. The problem is that this kind of choice seems small at first. The person tells themselves it is just an upgrade in standard, that they deserve to live well, that they worked hard for it. And no one is saying that living well is wrong. The mistake is in exceeding one's own reality just to appear greater before others. The mistake is in building a life too expensive for the income that exists. The mistake is in making financial decisions thinking more about applause than strategy. Because when life is built this way, the future keeps getting tighter. The margin disappears. Savings do not grow. Investment is postponed, and the person keeps running, working, wearing themselves out without realizing they're feeding a structure that drains their own tomorrow. And then we arrive at the most important point of all, the investment mindset. Here lies the true separation between those who only consume and those who truly build wealth. Whoever lives trapped in consumption looks at money and asks, "What can I buy now?" But whoever develops an investment mindset looks at the same amount and asks, "How can this grow? How do I turn 30,000 into 50,000? How do I make 100,000 multiply? How do I take what I have today and make it work in my favor tomorrow?" This is the shift that alters entire destinies. Because at its core, the difference between an ordinary person and someone who begins to build freedom lies not only in the amount they possess today, but in the way they think about multiplication. A mind trained for consumption will always find a way to spend more. A mind trained for investment will always find a way to expand resources. One thinks about immediate satisfaction. The other thinks about continuous growth. One wants to show what they have. The other wants to build something that lasts. One lives reacting to the present. The other plans the future with clarity. And it is this mindset that needs to be born within the person. The ability to look at money not as an end, but as a tool. Not as a trophy, but as a seed. Not as a status symbol, but as an instrument of freedom. When this shift happens, everything begins to change. The person stops living only waiting for a salary, stops believing that a promotion alone will save them, stops trying to impress people who do not build their future, stops confusing appearance with prosperity, and begins to live with more awareness, more strategy, and more firmness. In the end, whoever wins the money game is not necessarily whoever earns the most first. It is whoever first learns to think correctly about what they earn. It is whoever understands that wealth is not born from impulse, but from discipline, not from vanity, but from vision, not from showing, but from building. And when someone learns this, money stops being a hasty visitor that comes and goes every month and becomes a silent, constant, obedient worker, growing little by little until it changes the story of that life. So if there is one important decision to make after all of this, it is this. Stop living only to consume and start to build. Stop chasing appearances and start strengthening the foundation. Stop depending on a single source and start planting others. Because true prosperity does not happen when you appear wealthy. It begins when you become strong on the inside, intelligent in your choices, and capable of multiplying what passes through your hands. If this message made sense to you, like this video, subscribe to the channel and keep following along, because here you will learn to think about money the right way, with clarity, strategy, and vision for the future.